thousands of families in the area. It's also inspired the name of the company too, with it being called Umbrella Pharmaceuticals. Spencer then offered Dr. Marcus a job, as he'd now set up the Spencer Foundation. Dr. Marcus would be able to continue his research into the virus, but on the strict condition that his research results were to be reported to Brandon Bailey, and only Brandon Bailey. Spencer would set up a facility located in the Arklay Mountains, and it would become the home of the Umbrella Executive Training School, in which Dr. James Marcus would become the director. The training school itself served to recruit child prodigies and train them, or rather indoctrinate the young scientists, into advancing Umbrella's research. This is where James Marcus would carry out his work. He wasn't too bothered where he did the research, as all he cared about was his work on the virus. Brandon Bailey would stay in Africa in the meantime, with Spencer and Umbrella having hired a number of mercenaries to keep the empire at bay. He would cultivate more progenitor cultures, and these would be sent to Dr. Marcus in a training school. Work would then commence on facilities there in the ruins of Africa, much to the annoyance of Bailey, as the construction was interfering with his own research. Another laboratory would be built in the Arklay Mountains, and Spencer would hire renowned New York architect George Trevor to design and build a large mansion to sit on top of limestone caverns, inside which Spencer had built a lab where additional research could be carried out in secret, with this laboratory simply being called the Arklay Laboratory. The two sites would be connected via a railway system that Umbrella would use in order to transport staff and researchers to and from the facilities, this train being called the Atlantic Express. The mansion itself was designed to be very similar to Spencer's mansion in Europe, and was to have a number of secret rooms and traps. When George had finished it, Spencer planned to dispose of George, his wife Jessica, and 14-year-old daughter Lisa, managing to do so only because George knew all the mansion's secrets. But waste not, want not, and Spencer had both Jessica and Lisa used as test subjects to further their research on the progenitor virus. Anyway, nothing significant would happen at the training school until the year 1978, when the assistant director of the school, who would be the one to educate the students, would write about two standout scientists who had joined. These two were Dr. Albert Wesker and Dr. William Birkin. The two were ruthlessly competitive and were even described as cruel by the assistant director, but Wesker in particular is someone that Oswald Spencer is familiar with. Project W was a eugenics program developed by Oswald Spencer, as he wanted to produce what he considered a superior race.
Again?
The W, as you probably have guessed, stands for Wesker, after a Dr. Wesker, the guy who led the program. Essentially, gifted children all over the world would be kidnapped, and would be raised with a high level of education.
Sure, this is the right way.
The ideals of Spencer himself. All these children would then receive the last name Wesker. There are at least 13 of these Weskers, as detailed on a computer entry in Spencer's mansion over in Europe. Albert was one of these gifted children, and another, a woman who received the name Alex Wesker. Told about this program.
Holy shit!
Albert was not. Experimental virus. This was So when it came to research on the progenitor virus, there were actually three different areas of research. It was to be able to produce bioweapons that would rule out any need for a large conventional army, something that the US military could use. Work began on trying to produce the T-virus, or the Tyrant virus. The Tyrant project was essentially, and initially at least, a super soldier program.
Leon, up here.
Three different strains came out of this.
What the hell
Spencer's project developed the type A and B strains of progenitor, but these weren't very good. Remember I mentioned Edward Ashford? Well, he worked on his own strain in Europe alongside his son Alexander. But that didn't really end up going too well for the Ashfords, as in 1968,
You said the virus turned people into monsters,
Oswell would
not
arrange for an outbreak
reptiles.
at the lab in which Edward Ashford was killed. Finally, it was Dr. James Marcus that managed to produce a usable T-virus strain, reporting his success back to Brandon Bailey over in Africa. He didn't like any of the students working with him on the T-virus research, although his exception to this rule were both Albert Wesker and William Birkin, and such was Dr. Marcus's admiration for them but he encouraged the assistant director of the training school to
So
encourage
let me
a bit
get
of
this
a
straight.
competition between the
Umbrella
two.
sells
Then he
monsters
break
like
through
that.
Chaos after he had introduced the DNA of
Our
leeches
military?
into the virus.
Somebody else's?
A strain now suitable
They
for
don't
further
sell the
research.
monsters.
Weapons
They
research,
sell
to
the
be
viruses
specific,
that make
we would
them.
start testing on
The
animals.
Nemesis makes
The animals
viruses.
exhibited increased growth and aggression.
Scary is that out
He
of
wished,
viruses.
however, to further
And that's
research
far
on
more
human
dangerous.
test subjects. And he would do this by luring the students of the training school into his lab and he'd tell them to touch the leeches. He would commit terrible acts and would even subject staff members and students to torture methods, such as gas torture. He would keep some of them for future study. Some of them were experimented on and sent to other Umbrella labs for further research to be carried out on them. But just as Spencer had done with Edward Ashford, he now wanted Dr. Marcus out to do it. In the same year that Wesker and Birkin had joined the school in 1978, thanks in large part to a slew of scandals regarding experimentation, Umbrella had ordered the school to be closed, the lab shut down, and research personnel were to be